Hello again, Gills fans. Welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Pub. It is now, would you believe it, gentlemen, episode 13 that we have done. I think it's 12 that we've done together. I did do one trial episode in the ground, so we've still not been in a pub, but the gang is back together for episode 13. So welcome, as always, to Jack and Reece. Yes, gents, episode 12 was recorded on the 30th of April, 2 days after Mr. Stephen Clements was relieved of his duties at the end of last season. It's fair to say that plenty's gone on since then. Most of it is on the pitch. I don't think there's going to be a great deal of off the pitch stuff to discuss tonight. And it feels right that we talk about the new manager who was appointed on the 7th of May, and that was Mark Bonner. Gills got their stuff done really, really quickly, which I really liked. I just want to ask first, gentlemen, initial reaction, if we can rewind back to the first week in May. Not what we think now, which we'll get to later in the show, but what we thought at the time, because there was a lot of names being floated around. Some I can't remember, so you can help me out. But Reece, I'll come to you first. What was your initial reaction when it was announced that Mark Bonner was the new man in charge?
If I remember, I can't say I was massively overwhelmed or sort of, jumping with excitement at the appointment, but that's not sort of any discredit to Bonner himself. I think that's just because I didn't know enough about him. Other than that one season during COVID where he got Cambridge up, that was as far as my knowledge of him went. So I didn't have an awful lot to go off until sort of a few hours later, his first press conference come out, and straight away from that, I got a different vibe off him. And without wanting to go back to old managers too much, he gave me a very different vibe to his predecessor just from that first interview. And sometimes you can gauge quite a lot from a first impression from sort of listening to someone from the first time. And yeah, once I heard him speak and outline why he's here, what he wants to do here, I was drawn in, and yeah, from then my mindset's not changed really. So yeah, my initial reaction was sort of don't know an awful lot about him, but he set a good first impression, and he's carried on in that vein, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And it was a season that was a promotion, but it was in very different circumstances to what we're used to. So was it not to dilute the achievement, Jack, but at the same time he played in a season, or he managed a team to promotion in a season where there was no fans, so there's less pressure on footballers and that type of thing from the terraces. But Reece makes a good point there. First impressions, I think, are really, really good, and I thought he made an excellent first impression. So what was your initial reaction before and after the first interview?
Pretty much, Reece has stolen what I was going to say, to be honest. Very, very similar mindset, really. He flew under the radar for me. Of all the names that were on the list initially, he didn't even cross my mind as someone that I'd entertain. Not that that's a discredit to him. It was just there was other people above him in my mind that I thought were potentially more experienced fits. That's more a reflection on me than him, I would probably say. So the likes of Ainsworth, Warburton, for me, my initial reaction was I would rather it have been them. But I wasn't disappointed by any means. Glad we got it done quickly. I think that was very important. As Reece says, first interview was streets ahead of his predecessor. For me, he seems like the sort of person that if I was a player, or just in general life, when you deal with a manager, is someone you'd want to play for. I dare say. Seems like a very personable bloke. My only concern for me would be, and put aside the COVID season and the lack of fans, which I didn't actually take into account. For me, if I look at it, he had Paul Mullen up front, I believe, in the season that they went up. I don't really, and maybe we're coming on slightly to a topic we'll cover later, but I don't really feel we've got a striker of that ilk. Maybe Nevitt, but it's promotions are easier when you've got a goal scorer that scores 20 plus in a season, is what I would say. So that's the only consideration. Again, I'm not discrediting him in any way, but it's easier to get a promotion when you've got a caliber of striker like that. So it'll be interesting to see what it's like with him if no one in our squad turns out to be that, is what I'd say.
I think he had Joe Iron signed as well, who, to be fair, I think got 12, 15 goals. So yeah, they had a fairly potent front two, which is interesting because all we've seen is a different system to that. But the CV is something that has to be looked at, and we touched on the promotion in 2021, albeit behind closed doors. Was there any concerns in terms of the fact that he's very young? And again, we're asking for an opinion from 4 months ago, so I appreciate that's a little bit difficult, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Reece, did you have any concerns in terms of a lack of experience in terms of playing the professional game and the fact that he is only 38 years old? Or can we go along with what he actually said to me when I interviewed him? And that's the fact that, well, he's ahead of the 8 ball in terms of coaching experience because he started younger than most.
Yeah, the fact he never played the game didn't even cross my mind, to be honest, because like I say, I didn't have a great amount of knowledge about him anyway, so I didn't even sort of know that until further down the line. And no, I think it is a trend now that generally football managers are getting younger. There's someone only 2 years older than me managing in the Premier League now, which is quite terrifying. The only thing I would say is obviously where we went through that 6 months with Clements, I think I was the same as Jack, that whilst, like I say, I wasn't disappointed with Bono, I just didn't know enough about him. I was the same as Jack, that I was angling towards a more experienced appointment at the time, just because of what we'd gone through in the 6 months before. But obviously the big difference between Clements and between Bono is that Bono has managed in this division and had a promotion, whereas Clements was obviously going in completely blind. So no, I wouldn't say it overly put me off. Once sort of I'd heard him speak and got to grips with it. But yes, like Jack touched on, from the outset, before the appointment was made, I would have initially angled towards someone with more experience.
Yeah, and I think there's a tendency, because we know the names as well, isn't it? We know Gareth Ainsworth's gone and done it in the Championship. He had a good playing career as well. So maybe that is something that does hold Mark Bonner back in terms of we're not familiar with him historically, but we've got him now. We've mentioned this first impression, Jack, and the first interview, and I went back and watched it when I was writing up the notes. Grow together, I think, was a very important phrase. There was another one. This is a big football club, which I liked. We are a decent sized football club in League Two. I think we historically were a third tier team, to be quite honest. Culture and identity. The one that really stood out for me, though, was it's not Mark Bonner FC. Chemistry and collaboration. There seems to be a real emphasis from Mark on the fact that it's not all about him. It's going to be about him and a lot of support staff and the players and the coaching team and the office staff, the directors, the football department, and us as fans as well. He seems to be very big on it's sort of all in together.
Yeah, I think one of the, again, not to sort of harp back too much to Clements, but one of the things I said on the last episode that I felt he didn't do particularly brilliantly was get the fans on side. We never sang his name. We're already doing that with Bonner. So for me, I feel like even if he's putting it on potentially and playing the game a little bit, he's doing the right thing in terms of getting the fans on side. Obviously, he's not doing the fist bumps at the end of the game. He's leaving that to other people, but I do feel like the fans have already bought into him more already than we ever did with Clements. So that's a testament to him. And on the experience part, obviously he's experienced in this league, which is vital. If he didn't have the experience in this league at 38, then I'd probably be saying not too sure on this, but he's experienced and he does have promotion, even though despite what I said about having Mullen. And I think for me, he's still young and hungry. The argument you could make if we'd have appointed someone like Ainsworth or Warburton is that they're a bit long in the tooth, albeit Ainsworth is only in his early 50s, I think, but in managerial terms, fairly long in the tooth, and is the desire there. So for me, I think he's probably as hungry as some of the players are, in the sense that he wants to better his career and maybe move on from us one day potentially. But he is at the early stages of his career and he's got something to prove. And I think that will probably end up being a positive for us in the long run.
Absolutely agree. And Reece, I've got one final question for you in terms of Mark Bonner, the initial impressions. Is it fair to say that maybe there's a case that Mark Bonner can improve us and we can improve Mark Bonner? Because Mark Bonner did very well with Cambridge to get him into League One, but I think there was a very limited ceiling with what he could do at the Abbey Stadium once you got into the third tier, based on fan base, infrastructure, budget, dare I say it. I'd say ours is better set up to excel if we did get to the next level. So is there a case to say that this is not the perfect relationship, because ultimately time will only tell that, but in terms of the way we've gone about it, the two entities could very much aid each other to progress?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I was thinking of when we was making the first couple of points that while sort of when he initially was appointed, I didn't know an awful lot about him. As sort of the weeks and the 4 or 5 months, whatever it is that he's been here, has gone on, it does feel like us and him are just naturally a good fit. I think he gets what we're about, which is again another thing I think me and Jack both said about his predecessor, that we just didn't think he quite got
You can say his
us
name
as a football club enough.
You can say his name. It is okay.
Some people do still like to bring his name up on quite a regular basis, but
he started very well. There you go. I'll say it. He started very well. He's had the benefit of a pre-season, and credit where credit's due.
Yeah, he has. But then, you know, I think he won 2 of his first 3 with us, didn't he? So as we know very well from the start of last season, that just because we're sitting at the top now, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to walk away with the division. You know, we found that out the hard way last season. But no, he does feel like a really, really good fit for us. Maybe it helps that sort of he's managed Cambridge, who are probably, I'd say they're probably a bit of a smaller club to us, but it's not a massive gulf. And no, I think you're probably right that we probably do have better resources than they do, that if we do achieve that promotion like he did in Cambridge, we'll probably be able to go up and do more than just firefight to try and stay above the bottom 4, which has probably ultimately been Cambridge's aim since they got back into League One.
Yeah, I'd have thought so. I think that's a fair assessment. Jack, anything to add on initial impressions before we move on to topic number 2?
No, I don't think so, mate. Really, just summary would be, it wasn't overly infused or disappointed either way. But we'll move on to the impressions of him now later on.
Absolutely. So I think we'll go naturally to on the field, which is what most of this episode's going to be about, and transfer business seems like a good point. In terms of getting the manager in, we did that really quickly, and we did that with our transfer business as well. I had a look back today. There was 4 in before the 7th of June, which is ridiculously quick for us. Historically, we don't have anything done by the 7th of June, let alone season tickets, football shirts. And
there's probably a big reason why that those things have been done, mate. Probably.
I think there is, yeah, and there's probably 2 words why it wasn't done. But we won't mention him as well, as we're trying not to mention those from previous episodes.
There is still one thing that hasn't been done, which is the self-service pumps, obviously.
It's in early. There we go. I mentioned Stephen Clements before Jack mentioned self-service pumps. So we shall move on swiftly.
You've not mentioned Neil Harris yet, mate.
I haven't. I'm trying not to. But he's not left Millwall yet. Anyway, the 4 that we got in were Elliot Nevitt, Armani Little, Jack Nolan and Aaron Rowe. I think it's fair to say that it was fairly obvious that they were players that we needed in terms of areas on the pitch, given our real goal-scoring problems over the last 3 or 4 seasons. Just forget for a second, lads, who we signed. Jack, I'll come back to you first. How important was it to get some of that business done really early so that when the players did come back in for pre-season at the end of June or first day of July, whatever it was this year, that we was almost ahead of the 8 ball?
I think Verdane Oliver said it once, that it's good for team cohesion that you have a lot of the business done early. So undoubtedly, I think that probably does help the situation, mate. But at the same time, signing early, if they're poor, you're stuck with them. So sometimes you have to wait for some gems like we did. So I think it is important, mate. But I wouldn't say it's the be all and end all, but undoubtedly it will have helped with, like I said, team cohesion, tactics, all that sort of good stuff. So happy that they were brought in early, and it appeases the fans pretty quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's another thing, is it gets the fan base on board, doesn't it, Reece? Because it's nice. We remember last year, I think Conor Masterson was done about 4 days after Salford on the final day, and then it all went a little bit quiet. And then it all probably flattered to deceive a little bit, despite us rating it quite highly at this time last year. But what have you made of the early business? Is it important, or is, like Jack said, it maybe not as important as it could be made out?
I don't think it ever hurts, does it? How much we was able to benefit from early signings this summer, I'm not too sure, because obviously we've had so many pick-up injuries from the very start of pre-season that we may not have experienced an awful lot of benefit from it. But yeah, I did think the big benefit is that it keeps people like us quiet. We even see it from, we made them 4 signings. I remember Joe quite made it quite clear that we're going to be quiet for a few weeks now. So that inevitably happens because we've been told it's going to happen, and we all still start getting the itchy feet about, oh, we've not signed anyone for a little while. What's going on? Even though we've been told it's happening. So I think, to get that start, particularly in areas that, like you said, that we knew we needed to strengthen, was probably a good and a smart move. And also because I expect we've signed, especially in them early phases, we've signed players that probably had interest from other clubs. So had we not have moved sharpish to get them in, they may well have gone elsewhere.
That is a good point, actually, because if you think over the years, we've probably left it late because we've been trying to sign players that were realistically never going to come here, and then we've ended up getting the second or third choice players in those positions. So that is actually, when you think about it, it is a positive in the sense that obviously the business has been done early because these players were probably first choice or as good as near first choice, and they've actually signed for us, which is something we've not had for a very long time, especially in the summer window, I dare say. Maybe last season, but definitely not before that.
No, absolutely. And I think if you look at the players specifically now, then Elliot Nevitt got to the playoff final with Crewe last year. So he's joined a club that finished 7 places below where Crewe ended up. So that has to be some sort of transfer coup. Jack Nolan, star man at Accrington with 25 goal contributions, but decided to come back down. I know geography plays a part as well, but he could have easily gone, I'm going to stay up here. I'm a big fish in a little pond and that type of thing. Unfortunately, the only thing that goes against everything that I tried to point out about it being important is I think Jack Nolan's the only one that's featured throughout pre-season and all of the games so far. But such is life. That was phase 1. And then we got told about phase 2, which was boring, let's be honest. It was a case, I think, of trying to move people on. And we did that. We got rid of Scott Malone, who went up to Crawley. Ashley Nadesan moved on a little bit later in the window. But in terms of phase 3, I think it was meant to be called, which was then more people coming in, actually became the W's phase, weirdly enough. So the next trio that came in were Marcus Wiley from non-league Enfield, Jacob Wakelin on loan from Peterborough after some injuries to other front men, and then Ewan Williams on a free transfer, having impressed on trial. How do we see them 3 fitting into the plans moving forward, gentlemen? Because I wouldn't say, if you said to any of the fan base, maybe one at the start of the season, given injuries to others. But I think if you asked 100 Gills fans now, for me, these 3, the majority of the answer would be, are probably not automatic first picks once everyone is available. Reece.
It adds...
Oh, Jack, go on then.
Go ahead. I was going to say, mate, it probably adds good squad depth, mate. I think that's important. I think over the years, we've not had good squad depth. If you look back over the course of time, I think for me, with Wiley, albeit he's played at effectively Chatham's level. He scored in the playoff final against him, actually, didn't he? But it's one of those where over the years, I've kind of cried foul of the fact that we've not signed players that are prolific even in non-league, and it will be the proof will be in the pudding, will be in the eating with him, because it's a big jump up. But I think it's one of those ones where it's probably relatively cheap in terms of wage and fee, and why not take a punt? Why not? We've been crying out for a finisher, and it may take him a while to get up to this level, but I'm glad we've taken the punt on someone like him. I think with Wakelin, it's very early doors, but I think if we're playing a system of 1 up top, I'm not convinced by him at the moment. Obviously, he scored 1 goal, and we're early doors, right? So I don't want to be too negative and too judgmental at this point, but he looks a little bit powder puff for me to play up front on his own. He seems like the sort of lad that would be a decent fox in the box if something drops for him or there's a run in behind, but I'm not convinced he can do much else at the moment. Running the channels, winning stuff in the air, holding the ball up for a guy up front on his own. I think right now he's not going to be the man for that, potentially. We'll see. Williams, if I'm honest, mate, I didn't go to any of the pre-season friendlies, and I didn't watch the Swansea game on iFollow. It's the only one I've not watched that I didn't go to, so I've got no opinion on him other than he seems like a very good backup, and he's very young. So I've always said try and sign as many young players as possible. So it fits well within that model.
Reece, did you go to pre-season? If not, I'll take the Ewan Williams one.
I see a couple of the games. Yeah, and to be fair to Williams, he looked very bright in pre-season. He played well. He scored, didn't he, in one of the games?
Against Watford, I think, which was his unofficial debut. Yeah, he played as the 10 as well, I think, didn't he?
And I think as the season pans out, I'm going to feel a little bit sorry for him, because obviously he did pretty much all of pre-season. It was like, are we going to sign him? Are we not going to sign him? then it felt like, because obviously the talk about Dack come out, and it seemed like that was a bit of a roller coaster. Sort of, we heard that one day it might be happening, then it's definitely happening, then it's not happening now, and then it happened. And I wonder if we signed him at a stage where it looked like Dack coming back was quite unlikely. And obviously, a couple of weeks passes, and then Dack does return, and we've got Dack, we've got Johnny Williams, and we've got Ewan Williams. And I would suspect that, especially now he's had the red card, that Ewan Williams is probably going to be at the bottom of that pecking order. So I do struggle to see him.
Can I interject there as well and say we've also
Yeah.
probably got Jules Lapsley as well now, because they might have thought Jules Lapsley was going to be moved on, and I think Jules Lapsley's been absolutely spot on, but we'll get on to him a little bit later. But so there's essentially 4 people that can play as a 10.
But I suppose the flip side is that, you know, he was sort of at Cheltenham, wasn't he, not getting any sort of action at all. So it's still an opportunity for him to come to another EFL club and have an opportunity to try and impress, try and get into squads. And I suspect from a wage point of view, he's probably a fairly low risk addition for us. So I think he's handy to have around, and he's showed in pre-season that he has got ability there that we can call upon if we need to. I don't see him being a regular starter in our team.
No, I think it'd probably be sort of EFL trophy games, and Tuesday would have probably been an ideal opportunity for him. But he's got a call up for Northern Ireland under-21s, which I think is on BBC iPlayer tomorrow. So if anyone wants to watch one of our players, they've got England, haven't they? So that'd be a good test for him. But at the moment, I'd say he's a little way down the pecking order for a couple of reasons. Just to the fact that he's missed game time. He unfortunately got sent off when he did get an opportunity, and then he's had to go away with his country, which isn't ideal from a Gillingham perspective, but obviously you're never going to say to someone they can't go away and represent their country. Final phase of the transfer window was Luca Ashby-Hammond was the last one because of an injury to Jake Turner. Again, seems like it was a complete freak, saved the shot in training and come down and landed funny. I saw him at the game on Tuesday and he said it could be anything up to 12 weeks, which is highly frustrating. But I thought, we're going off one game, so I'm not going to sit here and, make a judgment on Luca Ashby-Hammond, but we needed competition. I think it makes sense in terms of Tate Holton staying where he is at Herne Bay and playing. But the final one is obviously a certain Mr. Dack, and I do feel we have to address this a little bit more than all the others because, well, it is Bradley Dack at the end of the day. I think Reece has already alluded to it. It was happening. It might have been happening. It's definitely off. Oh, it's on again. Oh, we're not sure. And then it happened. And we got the hashtag Dack is back. Another one that we've not seen in the league yet. But Jack, I'm going to come to you first. It's just a case of if you get the chance to sign a player of that ability, and still only 30 years old, let's remember that. And we know that the big risks are the 2 ACL injuries. But if we can get 25, 30 games out of him at League 2 level, could be an absolute difference maker, couldn't he?
Yeah, 100%, mate, 100%. He's one of those players that if he was maybe 34, 35, you'd still be saying, cool, we'll take him for a year potentially, but not, not in an ideal world. But at 30, yeah, I mean, he's still got, if he stays fit, he's got at least, you'd think 2 or 3 more years left in him at a high class level. So if it wasn't for I said this on Twitter, or X as it's called now, I said it on there just before we were signing him, because there's been quite a little bit of rumbling, or no, a tiny bit of rumbling of people saying, I don't really want him back. But the guy will win us points on his own, even if he plays 20 to 30 games. And if it wasn't for his injuries, he would be a Premier League player or have been a Premier League player and still be in at least the Championship. So it's a great signing for us, mate, as far as I'm concerned. It is a storybook return, but the guy is, on his day, probably the best player in League 2. He's probably the best player in League 1 if he signs for a League 1 team and stays fit. And his ACLs, I think the last one I read was 2021, was it? Potentially something like that. And he's had a few muscle injuries since. So
he returned from the second one in April 2022. So it's 2.5 years since he came back from an ACL injury, Reece. So in terms of that, are we maybe being overcautious? And of course, we'd have done some rigorous medicals on him. So it's not like we've just gone, oh, it's Bradley Dack, we'll just get him in and then take the chance, is it?
No, although I must admit, I watched the game on Sky Tuesday, and I think it's going to be the same going forward. But every time he goes into a challenge and he falls over or something, I do wince and just think, please get back up. But no, I agree with both your sentiments that once the opportunity come up, we had to do it. I think obviously it was only Pizza Cup game on Tuesday, but you can see by his touch and the way he moves the ball around that the quality is still there. The only thing as we move forward with him in the league that I hope that we can find a way to get him on the football in more advanced areas, because on Tuesday he was coming deep to pick the ball up quite a lot, whereas what we're going to want to do as we integrate him into the team more is get him in them dangerous areas around the edge of the box where we know that he can be lethal. But no, you know, he was championship team of the year probably 2-3 years ago. Had 2 brilliant seasons at that level for Blackburn. And by all accounts, it seemed like, I think he had one injury at Sunderland, didn't it? And the rest of it was just him not being fancied because they got a lot of good players there rather than him just not being fit. But, you know, he's come in and he's obviously doing his training. He's got his first appearance. He got through that 45 minutes fine, but it seems, and we'd expect him to be involved from Saturday. And hopefully it's just a case of when he gets that first start in the league. And yeah, hopefully we can see just, if we get 50% of the Bradley Dack we saw before, he's going to make a difference for us in this league.
Absolutely. And I think another thing as well, didn't Tony Mowbray leave Sunderland after signing him?
Yeah.
And obviously Mowbray was a huge fan of him at Blackburn Rovers, wasn't he? That's where he played his best football. So there was that as well. So I thought we just had to touch on that one, obviously, just because of who it is. But
last time we was in League Two, mate, I might add, he I saw him, Leon Legg, Matt Fish, and a couple of others in Beluga, and ended up getting drunk with them the day we got promoted, I think it was. So I'd like to repeat that exercise if possible at the end of this season.
Is Beluga still a thing? I don't think it's there anymore.
No, it's Beer Keller, mate. Well, we'll have to.
It's Beer Keller, isn't it now? But yeah, we'll still go there if we get
somewhere in
promoted.
Rochester, mate. Casinos.
Anywhere. We'll go to the factory if they've got self-service.
Yeah, good shout, mate. Good shout.
How much credit do Kelly Jackett and Andy Hessenthaler deserve this summer? Because they come under for a bit of stick, I think, definitely last January when Stephen Clements was here. And I think they probably got a little bit of stick last summer as well after the longer the season went on. So how much credit, and Joe Comper, because this was his first transfer window as managing director as well, do they deserve as a trio? And I'm going to ask that question again, and I hate asking it. I want your ratings out of 10 for the transfer window. We'll put it out there and we'll end up having to probably chew on some humble pie later on in the season. But Reece, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, I think they certainly deserve credit for the summer. On paper, it looks a lot better, a lot more sensible. Whether it's a case of they've learnt lessons, whether it's a case of there's people not involved in negotiations and stuff now, which perhaps held them back last summer, whether it's a combination of the two, we don't know. But what I would say is that the big difference to me this summer compared to last is that, you know, if we look at Bon, Malone, people like that, Johnny Williams last summer, it looked like we just sort of went for names. Whereas this summer we have signed players that have delivered at the level we're operating in as recently as last season, particularly with obviously Nevitt and Nolan, who got a shed load of goal contributions. Whereas sort of last summer we signed Bomb because he's a big name who's been around, but he scored goals at our level 5 years previously rather than the here and now. So yeah, I can't really criticise the signings we've made. We'll probably come on to it of what we think could have been better. Because I think there are elements that I think could have been better. I have concerns over one of the signings in Rowe. He already looks like he's going to be a big problem for us injury-wise. But in terms of the ability of the players that we've signed and where they've come from in terms of their work last season, no, I think we've had a much more smart window than we had the year before.
Yeah, and not to be, you know, digging out anyone, but is it fair to say that certain Mr. Bon hasn't even got a club yet this season, Jack? So maybe we were putting too many eggs in that basket.
Yeah, possibly, mate. When you look back on last summer to this summer's undoubtedly better. I think for me, we've improved in every area of the pitch. Commendable to get the business done early. We've got lots of depth now. Everyone that we've let go was, for me, the right call. I said about letting Hawkins and Lapsley go on the last episode, and we obviously put them on the transfer list. But I'm happy that they're still here actually on reflection, and it's good squad depth for us as well. I think for me, I mean, if I was to rate it, I mean, I rated last summer as a 9. Probably getting caught up in the moment, really, of us being top of the league and doing this at the same time as last season we were top of the league. I think objectively, if I look at it, I'd say it's probably an 8, but I'd say a good 8 for me. I would say the main 2 things we needed were pace and finishing. And from a finishing standpoint, Nevitt had a good season last season. Aside from that, not brilliant. I think he got 0 goals the year before for Crewe in a 20-odd game. So he's one that's, on paper, from last season, very good, but he hasn't got a consistent body of work, is what I would say. Wiley is obviously from the 7th tier, 6th or 7th tier. Wakelin, I've already said, I don't think he's a little bit powder puff. So I would caution whether we've definitively brought in a finisher. I think Nevitt's going to be the closest thing to that. And I also said about pace, and I'd probably say other than Rowe, which Reece has alluded to, I don't think we brought anyone in really with much pace either, to be completely fair, although I've not seen Nevitt enough to know if he's pacey or not, but I don't think he's a 15 to 20 on Football Manager type pace, should we say, which is probably what I felt we needed. So I've still got concerns in that regard. And Rowe, like we say, he's potentially injury prone. The other thing I would just mention as well is, as I said before, that I felt we needed to push the boat out this summer. And I think, like I said, every position is better than last season. There's a lot of depth and it's a good squad. Have we pushed the boat out and signed, apart from Nolan and Dack, have any of them been wow moments, or ones like, if we go back over the course of time that we've talked about before, ones we've missed out on, like Ollie Affey, May, game changers? Have we signed someone like that this summer? Maybe not. I think Nolan and Dack are the closest to that. So that's maybe a mild criticism, but we don't know the market we're working in. We don't know the players that are available. But everyone we've brought in, I think, broadly speaking, will improve us.
I suppose the caveat to that is probably that a year ago, we probably thought that Johnny Williams and Scott Malone were them wow signings, and Bomb when he come in, and it didn't really materialise, did it? And we probably sat here in one of these episodes saying we'd have been better off signing
very true, mate,
players that have done it in the league. So I suppose we, like Matt said, we could be sitting here eating humble pie in 6-7 months' time, because what we're saying now turns out to be completely wrong. But no, obviously the only slight disagreement I'd have with Jack is that he said we've improved every area. I'd argue that defensively we're actually weaker because we lost Malone and signed no one. That's not to say we're in a bad place there, because we had a good record last season. But I know obviously we're in a group chat with a couple of others, and we was having this conversation. I still think we're a little bit light back there, and I think Aimer's red card has probably exaggerated that problem. We've got one left. We've got one fullback for both sides. I know we've got people that can play there if need be, but I'd be concerned that if Hutton or Clark were to be out for a sustained period of time, I'm not too sure we've got anyone that I'd be massively confident going and playing there for sort of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games. That's the only concern I have. But, as long as the defenders are all fit, then, they're absolutely more than capable for this level.
I think if you look at a normal injury list of teams, I'd say our squad is broadly all right. In terms of the squad depth in defence, but you do make a good point, Matt. I mean, I obviously put it in that group chat that I felt that we were maybe a little bit short at centre back and left back, but I suppose you could say Shadowy can play left back. Robbie McKenzie spent a whole season there. We've got on the right hand side the same with McKenzie and also Webster. Looks like a good player for that position potentially. So maybe that's what they've seen. I also would probably make the argument that on the wing, we're potentially a little bit short as well. So, Rowe, if he wasn't injured, or didn't get injured as much as he has so far, you could say would be an absolute nailed-on starter with Nolan. But then outside of that, who else have we got? We've got Bode, who's very young, looks promising on the wing, probably more so than up front. But is he going to be able to do it consistently for us? And likewise, Clark. I mean, I don't know if I'm in the minority here, but I don't think he's brilliant. I think he's more of an impact player off the bench, and the fact that we're going to have to probably start him on Saturday isn't ideal for me personally. So I know he was linked with him on X via Pete O'Rourke, and he's usually quite reliable. But I genuinely felt Idris Kanu would have been a great addition for us. You know, we probably need a left back, we probably need a left winger. He'd have now two birds with one stone there. So I'm in agreement with you, mate. Definitely a left back. I think we've left ourselves a little bit short.
That's that would have been the signing of Idris Kanu if that had happened. Just people that are watching, just to clarify that's not Jack describing Peter O'Rourke's extracurricular activities, by the way. Just for clarification. No, well, we've started talking about it, and it was the next subject, and that was the squad. Reece, did you give the rating for a transfer window before we move on?
No. I'll probably say sit in line with Jack. I'll probably say 8. Happy with the business we did. I think, yeah, just perhaps a player, a fullback cover and a wide player cover short. But I think Bonner said it himself at some point that the budget was spent. So ultimately, if where players didn't go out, obviously Hawkins and Lapsley were transfers, which, by the way, I'm not disappointed about at all. I didn't really want them to leave in the first place. And we're sitting here now with Amos suspension. It's like a bit of a disaster that Hawkins has picked up that injury, because he'd be playing centre back at the weekend if he was fit. And obviously Lapsley's gone from being transfer listed, injured at the start of the pre-season, to now seemingly being above Johnny Williams in the pecking order. Which he's probably had the best run of games in his time at Gills, Lapsley, which says a lot about what he's been so far. But maybe he's stayed fit since the season started. And yeah, he's given us a lot. He's obviously scored the winning goal in one of the games. His work out of possession is, to be fair, even when he doesn't play brilliantly, I think the work that George gives you out of possession, his work rate is never something that you can question. So maybe that's why, because obviously them two ended up staying. It meant that we was restricted to the business that we could do. But you know, we can't have everything, can we? I suppose at this level, we just got to roll what we got. You know, Webster and Bode on Tuesday showed good signs against a good team that perhaps, if needed, they can help us out and can be options over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Just to clarify briefly, mate, just on the pushing the boat out comment. I think for me the only consideration to that, aside from what's been said, is quite a lot of the players we've signed, bar Nolan, I think, were free transfers, which, you know, part of me thinks you want to kind of move away from that, but you don't want to be stupidly spending money on players willy-nilly. We signed Wiley as well, didn't we, as well? But I can't imagine that was too much money. So for me, it's just the consideration that there is still quite a lot of free transfers there, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be poor. I mean, we every transfer we did under Scally in 95, 96 and 12, 13, I think were free transfers, and we got promoted. So we'll see.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and in terms of wages, we probably spent a decent amount on some of them.
Absolutely.
Because they come from, you know, they're top-end players at their club. So we're going to have to persuade them. Someone like Nevitt would be a prime example to move all the way down from Liverpool down this way. So, yeah, I'm probably in line with you guys. I think it's probably a 7.5, an 8. And obviously, if it all goes well, then it could ultimately be a 9 or a 10. But that depends on where we finish up. The next port of call is of course the squad as a whole. I've written it down, and I've made it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 22, 1, 2, 3, 26 players I've got listed as first team at the moment. So I've left out Alex Giles and I've left out Harry Webster, but I have included Joe Bode because he's played in pretty much every game. I always try to work on the basis of 2 per position, which is 22 players, but you have to understand that that's an average. So you're going to want 4 strikers. So you're going to have to be shorter somewhere else. Reece, you made a point about Amar's red card being a disaster. I think it's probably more to do with the fact that we've lost 2 people that can play centre half before then. That's more of the disaster in Connor Masterson, who's player of the year, and like you say, Ollie Hawkins, freak injury, breaks his wrist in training, apparently saving a Bradley Dack shot. So I think Max Emer getting a red card is part and parcel of the season, more than, you know, someone accidentally breaking their arm. But either way, it's a position that we're going to be in at the weekend. I know you two have mentioned about a fullback cover. I agree on the left. I'd have liked to have seen someone that could have come in and maybe played as a natural fullback. But I suppose to come back to the point about, you know, big signings and that type of thing, I'd include Elliot Nevitt in that based on his numbers last season, if we're including Jack Nolan in that. But maybe if we bought in a backup left back and another winger, we might not have signed Bradley Dack. So there's all swings and roundabouts to a degree, isn't there? And at the end of the day, we don't know exactly what's going on. But I think we have to be happy with the squad as a whole, don't we? Once everybody's fit. I mean, we've got 3 capable goalkeepers, albeit one's out for probably 2 or 3 months. Robbie McKenzie's probably your first choice holding midfielder at the moment. But if it wasn't for injuries to others, you'd probably say he was our backup right back. And then we might not be sitting here going, oh, we still need another right back. So again, it's all different caveats and reasons as to why. So in terms of, I think we've got 4 good strikers. Josh Andrews, Elliot Nevitt can be the focal point type. And then we've got foils for them in Marcus Wiley, who I thought was outstanding on debut. Just to chuck that in there last weekend against Chesterfield. Jacob Wakelin, I understand your concerns, Jack, about I just don't think he's going to be suited to play in the way that Mark Bonner wants to play. And I think it was probably a sign that we made because we didn't know how long the others were going to be unavailable for.
Still got Hawkins.
Still got Hawkins, who covers 2 positions when he's fit. So then it suddenly makes everything look a little bit better. Sure. I'm guessing we said we've got 4 number 10s. You can probably say we've got 5 because Timmy Dieng played there at the start of the season when we had to play Jacob Wakelin up front. So maybe we'll just go all out attack like old school Italian 90 on the Sega Mega Drive or something like that. But yeah, I think the biggest concern for me in the squad so far is one that Jack's already mentioned and Reece might have done as well. And that's Aaron Rowe. Just seems to be at the moment it's 1 game in and 1 game out, which is massively frustrating.
Yeah, because I know what was the last away game we played? Fleetwood?
Yes.
He come off the bench.
Changed the game,
in 2 minutes, he was holding his thigh. I remember when I didn't know anything about him when we signed him, but I remember when we did, Owen said to me that he thinks that last season he had quite a few issues. So yeah, and obviously if he's a wide player who plays on pace, it makes these kind of things more vulnerable to these kind of injuries, aren't you? If you're a quick winger.
I wouldn't say he missed, he played 38 league games last season for Crewe.
Oh, did he? Okay. Unless it was sort of in previous years then, but it wasn't a great that he got injured last week. I wouldn't even say he was particularly in full sprint.
No, it was a weird one,
just
wasn't it?
Completely pulled up. So yeah, it is a concern because I'm with Jack. I think Jaden Clark's done okay so far this season. I think he's looked better than he did last season, but I'm still not convinced he's the solution to go and create and score goals. He just looks like he lacks a little bit of that belief in his own ability. We see it in pre-season, when we were playing against Dartford, it seems like really, really good, really confident. But it now seems that at the moment, when we're getting into these league games with points on the line, that confidence is drained away a little bit. Maybe it's maybe if he's put away that 1-on-1 at Fleetwood, we're having a completely different conversation. But obviously he didn't, unfortunately. So yeah, I do think we're just a little bit short there. But Joe Bode did himself no harm on Tuesday. That he, from what I've seen, the little I've seen of him, he does look like he could be a better winger than a centre forward, especially given we've got a lot of options to play through the middle anyway.
I absolutely agree, and I tweeted something to that effect earlier today because he put a picture up and I quoted it and said he looks much more suited. I don't think he's a natural finisher. I think if he's a centre forward, he's played enough friendlies and enough EFL trophy games now, so he should have netted somewhere for us. I don't think he's actually scored a pre-season goal for us. He just seems a little bit snatchy around the box. And he had a couple of opportunities, didn't he, Tuesday night again. All right, he forced the keeper into a good save first half, but that 1 second half at 1-0, if that goes in, it's a different game. He's just got to hit the target. For me, I think he's absolutely suited to being a wide player. He's pacey, he's powerful, he's athletic, he's willing to run back towards his own goal. I think for a kid, he's not worried about the physical battle. He doesn't care for reputations. So I think, yeah, maybe there's a case. I know I've seen a few people on X saying it that maybe he starts. The only issue we've got with Joe Bode and Jaden Clark, I think, Jack, is the fact that Jack Nolan is our first choice right winger. So he's an inverted winger in that sense. So then you're playing Jaden or Joe on the wrong side as well. So everyone's coming into traffic. Maybe it'd be a case of saying, do we let Jaden or Joe have a go on the right and put Jack Nolan on his... I know it's very old school and traditional, but I'm not averse to wingers going on the outside and crossing from the byline. But that's my age.
Yeah, well, he might be 2-footed potentially, Nolan. But yeah, I know what you're saying, mate. It is the only real position for me that is a little bit light, to be honest. Other than left back, when you think about it, Hawkins can play centre back as well, as you've said. Left back, we've got a few lads that can play there. Wing, yeah, it apart from left back is the place where it's a little bit worrying in the sense of if we're relying on Bode on, or Bode, Clark, or Wakelin, who can also play there, although I know Darren McAntony doesn't want him to. That's three names where you go, are they going to win us games? Maybe not. But I do agree with Reece's point on the confidence thing with Clark as well. He does, when he's confident and flying, he seems like an exceptional player. When he's not, he's terrible.
So we just think there's a little bit of a case of there's sort of no in between. You're either getting like a 5 or an 8.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
He's like a League Two Theo Walcott.
I suppose on the wingers thing as well, that it's not a perfect situation, but and you know, I think from what I've seen of Bonner so far, I don't think he's a particularly stubborn manager. I think he's willing to be flexible. Once we have got the bulk of the squad back, if we were lacking in wide options, I don't see why we couldn't go to a 3 with Clark and Hutton as wing backs and then play 2 of the centre forwards. Because, you know, if you had Andrews and Nevitt up front as a pair, I could imagine they'd be quite the handful. Or like Jack says, I think Wakelin would be better playing with a more physical partner. We probably have options there as well. And then you can get Dack in the 10 maybe.
Or so Nolan played in the 10. You could go to a diamond potentially as well, couldn't you?
As long as Bonner's not sort of stubborn to it's this 4-2-3-1 and that's it, which I don't think he will be. I think modern coaches now are generally quite versatile. Then I think we will have plenty of options. It's just pouring at the moment on us in terms of injuries, and it seems like everyone's getting injured in any which way possible. So yeah, hopefully now we've started to see from Tuesday night that the first few have started to come back. Because as weird as it sounds, Tuesday was possibly the strongest lineup we've put out in any game so far.
Yeah, aside from probably centre half, right back.
Yeah,
I think I wouldn't be too disappointed if in 3 months our central midfield is going to be Dacky in the 10 with Johnny Williams partnering Ethan Coleman. Yeah, I wouldn't be disappointed with that. And like you say, if you can get Nevitt on at half time for Josh Andrews, you're not going to be in too bad a place either. But we'll see what happens moving forward. We've mentioned in moments already, and I want to talk about them in not loads of detail, but I think the 3 youngsters that we've seen in and around the first team in pre-season and as the competitive games have started are Joe Bode, who's played 5 out of the 6 games in some form or another. Alex Giles has made 2 appearances. I think he was hung out to dry a little bit at Swansea, bless him, and Mark Bonner alluded to that as well and said that we just had to play him because Ramo Hutton had been struck down ill before kickoff. And he got an absolute rinsing off the Swansea left winger that night. But that wasn't anything on Alex. That was just calibre of opposition against the kid who was making his debut. And then Harry Webster, I thought was outstanding against Peterborough on Tuesday, considering he was up against League One. And I think some murmurings that Poku, who came on in the second half, championship quality as well. I thought he was really, really good. And he gave us an outlet moving forward as well. It wasn't like he just come into the team and went, I'm just going to defend and I'm not going to be brave. He essentially did what Ramo Hutton's been doing in the league games, and that was he just stood really high when we had the ball and almost became a second winger. I thought he was really, really good. What have we made of them 3 so far, Jack?
I think Webster and Bode are the closest to the first team than Giles, mate, to be honest. Giles does look a little bit lightweight potentially in his stature for the position he's playing in or meant to be playing in. We'll see, mate. I think it just goes to show how deep the squad is, to be honest. It's nothing but a positive, and also, you know, if you hear or if you listen to people that work for the club or are close to the club, Skipper, albeit we've got quite a lot of midfielders, it has to be said, Skipper's meant to be absolute quality, to be honest. From what I've heard, he's ex-Arsenal. I think he's somehow related to Frank Lampard and Jamie Redknapp. I can't remember how. I think he's Lampard's nephew, potentially, or something like that. So there's another class one potentially there. So I think it's a credit to our youth setup. We do seem to always bring through some decent lads more often than not, and let's hope they can follow in the footsteps of the returning son.
Absolutely, yeah. Reece, how do you see it? Do you think that once we get everyone back, and I say that with fingers firmly crossed, that then the likes of maybe Bode, Giles and Webster all find a decent loan, because you want them to be playing at the end of the day, don't you? You don't want them just sat in the stands every Saturday afternoon. So is it a case maybe of we'll keep them around at the moment until the injuries clear up, and then we'll have a look at getting them to a decent level to go and play every week?
Yeah, it's quite possible, because I suppose, would I be right in thinking that Dack coming back also qualifies him as our homegrown player? So I don't think we'd necessarily even have to put one of these kids on the bench. Yeah, the centre-back definitely, because obviously once Amer's back, Masterson's back, we've got Hawkins, we've got OG. He's going to be fifth in the out of two centre backs being picked. So the chances of him getting football is quite rare. Webster, it wasn't just Tuesday night. Did he start the Millwall friendly as well?
I think he started Watford. I think he came on at half time.
He's one of them.
Millwall,
He
definitely
definitely, and he was very good.
Again,
So as we've touched on, we don't have an awful lot of cover at fullback at the moment. So he's doing himself no harm. But obviously Hutton is the out and out first choice, and he will be the whole season, all the time he's fit. So it is quite possible that he may go out on loan eventually. And with Boda, I suppose if he wants to play as a striker and Bonner season predominantly as a striker, then he probably will have to. But if he's happy to adapt and is enjoying playing in this more wide position, then I think there's going to be opportunities for him to get minutes, even if it is off the bench for half an hour, to come and make an impact. Because other than Rowe, Clark, and Nolan, we're not blessed with options in those areas.
Yeah, so it's again games like Tuesday night. In a couple of weeks, I think we play Palace's kids, and then we've got Stevenage start of October. He's going to get game time, I think, in them games. But yeah, I think bottom line, like Jack said, it's just nice to see a few that are coming through, and you can actually see the potential there for them to really go and have an impact around the first team squad. Season so far is obviously what matters. It's all about winning football matches at the end of the day. So far, we played 6 in all competitions. We've won 50% of them, drawn 1, lost twice, scored 8, conceded 6. But if you break that down, obviously both defeats have come in cup competitions. So for me, if that had been offered 9th of August, I'd have said thank you very much. In terms of the league, it's Carlisle at home 4-1, Morecambe away 1-0, Fleetwood away 0-0, and Chesterfield last Saturday at home 1-0. Caesar sit atop the very embryonic Sky Bet League 2 season. We've said for ages, Jack, that we want to score more goals and we need more people to contribute. So how promising is it the fact that we've got 3 new signings off the mark already and 8 goals scored, 8 different goal scorers? I get you want probably 1 or 2, an Andrews or a Nevitt, or dare I say it, a Bradley Dack to go on and get to double figures or 15. But it's nice that already we're spreading the goals around and we're not putting too much pressure on just 1 or 2 players.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, mate. It is vital that we have goal scorers in different positions. I think the only thing I would just say, if you take the Carlisle game out of the equation, we've scored no more than 1 goal in any of those games, have we? Again, so was Carlisle a flash in the pan? We don't know. Chesterfield, obviously, we've had a man sent off. Do we go on and get a second with the aimer on the pitch? Maybe. I would just say the Morecambe and Fleetwood games weren't particularly great on the eye. I've always condemned the lack of attacking intensity as being the main problem with the club or the team, shall I say? And I think it's obvious we have more of that on a regular basis at home over the last 2 games. The league games, Chesterfield and Carlisle. I think we've come out the traps very quickly, broadly speaking, and kept the intensity up most of the game. But away from home, not so great. So I've got some concerns, mate. Like I say, 1 goal in every game bar 1. And gutsy away performances, but not ones where we've taken the game by the scruff of the neck and really gone for it. So we'll see. It's hard to judge so soon with the injuries. Coupled with the back of my mind thinking, well, last season started well. And we was all waxing lyrical at this exact same point, thinking we were going to go up. We were predicting top 3, and look where that got us. So I think it's really one of those where it's a difficult episode, mate, because it's hard to judge so soon on what's happened. And like I say, the injuries have taken their toll a little bit, but we're still up there, which is brilliant. And that's probably one of the main differences from last year, other than the squad being better, in my opinion, is the fact that we've had a lot of injuries and we're still up there. When we get a full strength team back, if we ever do, I think there's a very good chance we're top 3 potentially.
Yeah, I think as much as we have to be cautious, Reece, and I've written down, haven't been faultless by any means, but given the amount of injuries and early season travelling, how encouraging has the start been, especially given we've had so many people unavailable, and dare I say it, we've beaten 2 of the teams that were fancied to go up in Carlisle and Chesterfield.
Yeah, I think we've all learnt the lesson from the start of last season that we're not going to sit here and say we've been brilliant. I don't, in terms of the performances and the amount.
Are we going to sit here and say that we're not going to drop out of the top 7 all season? I wouldn't.
It's too tight at the moment. I think there's loads behind.
I'm winding you up because you said it on camera last year, didn't you?
But no, in terms of the way we're playing at the moment and the amount of goals we're scoring, the amount of chances we're creating, we don't look an awful lot different to last season. But I think Jack's made the point, we have to caveat that with the injuries. You know, we've played the first 4 games without a target man, without a focal point up front. You know, Jacob Wakeling's a willing runner. If he's got space behind, he can be a threat. But you know, when we go away to Fleetwood and to Morecambe, we wasn't gifted them kind of opportunities, and we missed that focal point. We've still got Dack to come into the fold. Hopefully, we can get Rowe fitter at some point. So, I think whilst I don't think we've been fantastic, what is important that we have retained that solidity at the back from last season. I agree with Jack that whilst I don't think we're converting enough into chances, and you know, we've scored 8 in all competitions, we've only scored 6 in 4 league games, which probably isn't much different to last season at the moment. I do think we look like we try to play forward with a little bit more purpose and a little bit more intent. And yeah, I see enough there in what Bonner's trying to do that once we do get, you may, like he says it enough himself, you may never get a fully fit squad during the whole season, but as soon as we can get something close to resembling that, I think we've got enough firepower in us that we can produce. The Carlisle 4-1 game, it wasn't a 4-1 performance, I know, but if oppositions make mistakes, which they do in this level, you have to punish them, and we did on that day. For the last 2 years,
we were clinical, weren't we?
That.
We were clinical, and that's something we've not done for 3 years.
And I think that's the big thing, that, as you've said, we've had different goal scorers, and every goal we've scored so far this season has been someone different. We've got that, we've got Nevitt, we've got Andrews all to come back in more regularly. That we have got players that I think them kind of games, they could be tight, but it could be both teams get 4 or 5 chances. We have now got players that I think can mean that we can win them games 3-1. Whereas we're relying on 1-0 clean sheet. Otherwise, we don't win a game for the last 2 years. I think we will have that in us. So yeah, the important thing for this start is that with the injuries, it's just been, can we pick up as many points as possible from a difficult set of fixtures with a threadbare squad. And if that's all we got to judge at the moment, we can't be doing much more than we are.
No, absolutely. And Mark Bonner said that, like, we're here and there's so much work to do to get to where we want to be. And he understands that, we understand that. But if this is first version of Mark Bonner's Gillingham, then I don't think we should be anything but encouraged. It feels more sustainable, I think, than winning 1-0 every week, absolutely. But we do need to improve. But like you've said, if you go through the squad, Connor Masterson's only played 1 league game. We've not seen him since. Ethan Coleman's not been seen. Who else? Josh Andrews has played, Nevitt, 15 minutes? Nevitt. Aaron Rowe's been in and out. Timmy Dieng's been in and out. There's so many. We've basically
Williams started once.
Yeah, we're playing a new central midfield partnership as well, who I think have been absolutely immaculate, the pair of them. Amani Little and Robbie McKenzie. I'd like to chuck that in there as well. Another encouraging thing for me is the different types of wins. And I know it's a very small sample size again, but I think if you look at it, Chesterfield, we were clinical, took our chances when they come along, which we've not done for ages. Morecambe, for all their problems, they're going to be a bunch of players and a manager that wants to prove everyone wrong. So I don't think you're going to get an easy ride up there. So to come away with 3 points, I thought was really good. Fleetwood weren't at our best, managed to dig it out. Chesterfield, for me, and you two might shoot me down, I thought was the best result of the season. Because I thought, I come out of that game and I said, yeah, we rode our luck, but I think we earned our luck as well. And people forget that I think we struck the frame of the goal twice as well. I think Wiley's was a combination of keeper's arm and the post. Jules Lapsky hits the post. If we go 2-0 up, I don't think then their last opportunity comes where they've hit the bar. I thought we were bloody brilliant without the ball for half an hour to just bank up and go 4-4-1. We had Marcus Wiley making his debut. We had Jules Lapsky was cramping up. Shad Ogie was limping. Robbie McKenzie played 2 positions. I thought that, and I heard it somewhere on another podcast today, someone said it felt like that should have been a game in the running. That's how big it felt when the final whistle went, that we found a way to get over the line.
It's got shades of Rotherham at home when we beat Evans's team. It's probably the way I would describe it. Yeah, backs to the wall, real defensive effort, Rainer men behind them.
Yep.
Yeah, it probably is slightly more satisfying a win than the Carlisle one. And it would have been nice to have finished it off with a second goal potentially. I think if we didn't have the monkey on our back a little bit of a lack of goals over the last few seasons, I wouldn't be sat here thinking, oh, I wish we'd won a few more of these games, more than 1-0. So in my head, I'm thinking, well, 1-0 is not a great result, but we had 10 men for 30 minutes and we defended brilliantly. And in isolation, it's a very, very good result, mate. I think for me, I know it's only 2 games, like you say, it's not a big sample size, but if I compare this season to last and probably the season before, I'm genuinely looking forward to every home game at the moment, whereas in other seasons I haven't. So I think that's a testament to them in this early stage of the season. Hopefully they keep it up.
And what I think's been encouraging as well is that, particularly the 2 home games, we have had patchy, dodgy spells in the game. Saturday was the first 10 minutes. First 7 minutes.
Absolutely,
we was dreadful.
Yep.
And I feel like for the past 2 years, if we start a game like that, that's it, that pattern's set. Whereas, the first game of the season, for the first 2 or 3 minutes, it was the most attacking intent I've seen from us for nearly 3 years.
Yep.
And then we scored the goal and we fell apart a little. Not fell apart, but we didn't play well for the remainder of the first half. But then we found a gear to go again. And I don't think we've really had that for 2 years. But sort of like we start a game, and if we start playing well from the start, we're all right. If we don't start well, it's not going to come. Whereas at the moment, we look like that. Even if the game's not going the way we want it to, we can see out a rough period and then go again.
And then we have people with the ability to go and score a goal to give us the cushion again, like
exactly.
Jack Nolan. We didn't have that player last season.
No, and I suspect what Bonner's looking for, that as players come back, it's more that we can start well and continue well for the vast majority of the game, which we probably haven't really done yet. But, just with Saturday, there's circumstances behind that with the red card. But no, I think there's a much stronger mentality about the squad. I think they're more confident that they can come through any situation. And if they don't take vast amounts of confidence from last Saturday, then I don't know what will. Defending against a very, very good technical side with 10 men. And to be honest, if I was a fan of Chesterfield, I know they've said that they played really well and they were unlucky because they hit the woodwork a couple of times, but 2 of them from range, I don't think they did anywhere near enough against 10 men to warrant a result on Saturday. I thought we forced them to run out of ideas quite early in the second half, and other than flashing balls across the face of the goal, they didn't cut us open through the middle of the pitch once, from what I can recall. And we still had chances. We did Lapsley hit the post when we had 10 men with a header?
Lapsley hit the post literally seconds before Amar got sent off.
I thought it was after.
But I totally agree about. I thought we looked more comfortable when we had 10.
Yeah,
because we just knew what we had to do. We just had to go 4 in front of 4, and we just had to say to the front man, run around, hold it up where you can, which was when we brought Andrews on. But yeah, they ran out of ideas quickly, and I think that was testament to us. That's why Grigg got taken off, Markande got taken off, and they brought on 2 youngsters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said to Tom, who I sit next to, season ticket, that funnily enough, at the moment Amar gets sent off, I said, it's not ideal, but they were starting to overrun us a little bit, and obviously they kept coming on to us after that to a certain degree. But I actually said to him, I think ironically this will actually do us a favour, because it will focus the minds into just shutting up shop and not thinking about going for a second goal, which we didn't really do, but we defended so heroically. I think it just everyone switched on more than they might have done with 11, if that makes any sense.
No, I totally agree. And it felt like with 10, the game was played in front of us, whereas because we were trying to be expansive with 11, there were still gaps in behind and they were getting to the byline, whereas I don't think they did when it went to 10. And I think everything was in front of us and we defended superbly. 2 people that I want to talk about, and we have touched on them as well. Jules Lapsley and Ollie Hawkins, we've already said, were made available for transfer. Now, we've never played the game professionally, so we don't know how that feels to go to work knowing that you're essentially not wanted. You're essentially being told, we don't think you're good enough to contribute moving forward. I think Mark Bonner's come out recently and said their attitude's been absolutely spot on. But aside from that, because we don't see training every day, I think their contribution on the pitch has been absolutely spot on in the game time that they've had so far. Jack.
No, go on.
Go ahead, Reece. Go on.
Sure. In terms of Hawkins, to be fair, I think throughout his time here, when he's been fit, he's contributed to the maximum that a player of his build and attributes can offer. Obviously, it was a bit of a strange situation because they were transfer listed, but they were transfer listed before Bonner arrived. So I don't know if it was a case of that when Bonner come in, they went, look, these 2 are on the transfer list because they're on XYZ amount of money. We don't think they're quite justifying that. We'll try and get rid of them. Whereas I've always got the vibe that Bonner has been quite happy to have them around. And when it got towards the end of the window, I know there was there was a press conference and he was asked about him, and he went, "At the moment, there's no sign of anyone going anywhere, and I hope it stays that way." And now, obviously, we've seen Lapsley get into the team and probably show, like I say, probably his best patch of form under us in his time here. So no, their professionalism has been brilliant. But like I say, throughout the 2 years they've been here, that's been something that you can never sort of question the two of them about. But I suppose when you're earning a good wage, it would be easy to just go, "Do you know what? I'm all right here. I'm not in a rush to leave. I'll just take the money." But they're obviously not. They want to help. They want to contribute. And if Hawkins has played a couple of positions in pre-season, then obviously he come on at centre back and scored that goal for us at Swansea. And no,
already in there somewhere, weren't there?
I'm really glad they're still here. I know Lapsley's had a lot of critics in his time here, and he hasn't probably delivered what we expected. But I do think he's a really good player, and I think just the key for him is fitness. And it is probably a controversial opinion, but I would always pick a fit George Lapsley over a fit Johnny Williams in my team. But that's just me personally.
Would you pick a fit George Lapsley over a fit Bradley Dack, though?
No, let's not be silly.
Fair enough.
I think Lapsley can play his centre mid a little bit as well, though, can't he? So you have that added benefit of that he's quite versatile in that he can push further.
I think his best work's been out without the ball, and that's not why we bought him.
No, I agree,
like Reece said earlier, I think he's in terms of snapping into tackles and working hard out of possession, I think he's been fine. But when you sign a player with that reputation of being, one of the best tens at the level, he's not scored enough or assisted enough goals. But the big thing for me is he looks like he's enjoying it again. And he looks like he's trusting his body. I don't think he trusted his body last season. He always looked to be playing within himself because he was so scared of tweaking an hamstring or pulling a muscle. Whereas he just looks a lot fitter and more confident in his own body and his own ability at the moment.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree. He does look like he's going to be an asset for us. I mean, the fact the prerequisite of many players, and Bonner said this himself about his squad, is that you want grafters, and you get that with him, mate. If absolutely nothing else, so you could level at him that he's not assisted many goals or scored many, but he has always worked hard, and not that it's necessarily his role, but I'd probably just to touch on Armani Little, who seems quite similar in that vein as well. Really, he seems like he's going to be a really good find for us. It's in a more defensive ilk than perhaps Lapsley is.
Yeah, I think so. I know Bonner said when he joined that he can play deep and conduct the game from there, but he can also play further forward and run into opposition boxes. But I think he's tailor-made for that sort of that double pivot, if you want to call it that, because he knows Mackenzie's just going to be there firefighting, and then it allows him to get on the ball and get us moving. And if you've got a fit George Lapsley or a fit Johnny Williams or a fit and firing Bradley Dack further forward, then we're going to be in a good place more often than not, aren't we? And Ollie Hawkins, we've already said, like I say, he covers two positions. I think I know we've got more options now, but I think in this side he scores goals if he plays up front, because we'll play to his strengths, because we've got people that can deliver from wide now. I think last season it was almost a case of stop Conor Mahoney delivering anything into the box, you stop Gillingham.
Yeah, that's fair, mate. I think, if you put one on his head, he'll score plenty. Yeah, I do agree. I said in the last episode that he runs in treacle a little bit and he can't press. So as long as we're not doing that, then he'll be an asset, man. I mean, he hit the bar, didn't he, at Morecambe? Did he play at Fleetwood? Was he injured?
No, that was the first one he missed. It was the 2 days before he'd broke his arm, wasn't it? Yeah.
I think you could tell, like, in the sense of him and Lapsley coming on really added to that Morecambe game, whereas at Fleetwood we just didn't have anything off the bench, really, did we, to spark us into life. And I think he's that sort of player that if you're chasing a game down and you've started Andrews and you need someone in a similar ilk to come off, and even if he starts, to be fair, but if he comes off and you're chasing a game or even trying to defend it, to be fair, on 70, 75 minutes, he'll be a very, very good squad player. I think the main reason they're on the list, mate, not necessarily down to their ability. I think it's more their ability versus the wages that we're on, probably.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. But yeah, it's that if they're our squad players, then we're in a fairly decent position, aren't we, Reece?
Yeah, 100%.
Right. Final subject before we start calling full time on this episode. We started talking about Mark Bonner and first impressions that he gave, that we got of him back in May. Reece, I'm going to come to you first. Mark Bonner now, 4 months into the job. What do we think?
Yeah, very impressed. I think he's the right fit for us, despite the fact that I didn't know much about it. I wasn't overwhelmed when he was appointed. But as time's come, I like everything he says. I listen to it, all of his press conferences. You can tell he's knowledgeable about the game. He's personable. Got really good personality. He can have a little bit of a laugh and a joke with the press. And you can tell that, one, he just loves the game of football, and two, you can tell that he's really enjoying being here. And yeah, I suppose it was good for him a way that he'd come in so early, but I suppose it was also probably frustrating for him in ways that he's had to wait so long to get competitive football going. But you can already see, even if it's just from mentality, confidence that the players now have. You've touched on Lapsley there. I think you can already see signs that, whilst I've said that I don't think performance-wise we're looking massively different to last season yet, that is going to take the most time. But in terms of mindset, attitude, confidence, belief in the players and the fan base, I think you can already tell that he has made and will continue making an impact. So no, I've got no faults for him at the moment. He started really well. Obviously, it's a results game, and at the moment we've got 10 points from 4 games. So other than winning that Fleetwood game as well, which would have been a bit of a stretch, I can't ask any more from him really.
No, points win prizes at the end of the day, don't they, Jack? And if you'd said, 9th of August before we kicked off against Carlisle, he was going to have 10 points in the first month, we'd have said thank you very much. But just to touch on what Reece said, I just think he's a proper football man, isn't he?
Yeah, he comes across like a student of the game, mate. He's had to learn the hard way, really, compared to others. He's not been spoon-fed it. I think for me, he's given off nothing but good vibes, really. As Reece says, personable character. He's energetic. I think from an attacking style, he wants to attack. The intensity is a good thing for me. It's what we've been crying out for a long time. I think he understands the brief. The fact that we want to go up is basically what he's been told, and rather than downplaying it, he's embracing it, which is a good character trait, I think. He's constantly looking for improvements. I kind of see myself in him a little bit when it comes to my job, in terms of, rather than burying your head on things and just thinking that everything's fine. Like, he's always looking to improve, which for me only leads to you being better at what you do. So I think that the players will get better. I think he's been open really into the performances, and none of his press conferences have come across like he's not watched the same game as us.
No, not at all.
And I think the other thing, really, if you look back on when Clements got the job, we all thought, well, I don't know if getting rid of Harris was the right decision, and constantly talked about Harris off the back of that, just because of how Clements was doing, and the fact the decision may not have been the right one. Whereas I think, it's early doors, but even if we dropped down the table slightly, outside of the playoffs, even I still don't think we'd look back and talk about Clements like we did Harris. I think that's a testament to him that I think we've made the right decision ultimately, and you only make the right decision if you bring in the right man after that, and I think we have this time.
Yeah, I think, and obviously the proof will ultimately be in the pudding after 46 league games, but it's a very promising start. There's been 2 press conferences that really sort of touched a nerve with me. One was last Saturday. I think one of Radio Kent's reporters asked him and said, does that feel like a game that potentially makes a big difference come the end of the season? And he straight away went, I'm not interested in the end of the season. He said, we're nowhere near that. He said, I'm interested in Tuesday night. I'm interested in next Saturday. If we keep doing things correctly, then the end of the season takes care of itself. And the other one, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, was after Morecambe. He knew that we'd not been great, but he said, we'll worry about that Monday. Tonight is for getting in the changing room and singing the last waltz. It's about having a laugh, enjoying a win that's been bloody hard fought, and having fish and chips on the way home. And I thought that's going to get him a long way, Reece, because you'll want to play for him with an attitude like that. He could have come out and gone, we got lucky, or that wasn't good enough and this wasn't good enough. But he went, no, this is about the players. They've worked bloody hard. They've gone to Swansea in the week. They're going to have their rewards, and then we'll work hard again next week.
And again, it's just also him making it abundantly clear that he knows the level we're operating at. He's been there. He's won promotion with a team, and I fully suspect that season Cambridge come up, they probably didn't play well every week. It's the nature of League Two teams and League Two footballers that they're not going to be 9 out of 10 all the time, but it's them games where you can only play at 6 out of 10. Can you get a result out of it? And sometimes, maybe as players that they are the results that they get the most satisfaction out of when they've really had to dig in and work hard. Like I would fully suspect that if you asked a group of players, that they would say that winning 1-0 at home to Chesterfield with 10 men for half the game was more enjoyable than beating Carlisle 4-1. Because them kind of results, like the Morecambe away, I think they build character in a team. So no, all in all, really, really positive. And like I think Jack summed it up really, really well. That at the moment, you know, a new week starts. I'm already looking forward to the weekend to see how the next game goes. At times in the last 2 years, it hasn't always been like that. I have to be honest.
No, I think we've touched on that in previous episodes. I think we've all, like me and you as season ticket holders, said we was only going because we paid for a season ticket. If it had been a case of buying a ticket on the Saturday, we probably would have done something else.
Yeah, it feels different this year, mate.
I think it does. Yeah, it does, like we said, and it feels more sustainable. Any other business?
No, not for me, mate.
Reece, no?
No, nothing from me.
So just one final thing then that was breaking news a couple of hours ago is that Ethan Coleman has signed a new contract, which I think, number one, is a brilliant piece of business from the football club. It's great to see us tying down young talent to longer term deals, although it's not been disclosed. And number two, I think it's thoroughly deserved. Player of the year last season will only make us better in terms of a team and a squad moving forward, because we've missed him in the first few weeks. As good as Robbie McKenzie's been, we could have had him on the bench, and I think it's thoroughly deserved.
Definitely, mate. He was my player of the year that I voted for. I think he's a great young talent, and I think you have to say credit to Joe and the guys for getting that deal done, because I think one of the things we've been very guilty of in the past under previous regime is well, maybe we have offered contracts to people and they've just turned them down because we were offering peanuts, but we're doing something again that we've not done previously, which is all credit to the people at the club.
Absolutely. That, gentlemen, I think is a nice point to blow the full-time whistle on tonight's episode. Always a pleasure. Really appreciate your time. I know you're going out, Reece, to a pub. We will get in a pub one day, I promise. Maybe, if there's a promotion party episode, maybe we'll do it in a pub. No pressure, Mark. No pressure, players, if you're watching. As always, everybody, appreciate you watching. Like I say, it is free to subscribe and it is free to press the like button. So please keep doing both. I really do appreciate all the support as we strive to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of the season. Ambitious, potentially, but you have to be, don't you? We'll be back Sunday with a match day review, looking back on the Doncaster game, another tough one that starts off a very tricky month in terms of fixtures. We go to Doncaster on 9 points. We then have to host Tranmere unbeaten as it stands. We then go to Notts County unbeaten as it stands. And then we finish the month with a visit from our friend Stephen Clements, who we've already said have started the season very well. But lots of time between now and then. Like I say, be back Sunday. As always, thanks for watching. And most importantly, up the Gills.